Long before bread became the world's most common food, long before wheat fields stretched across continents, long before cows were milked, sheep were herded, or cities rose from river valleys, there was the egg. It wasn't invented, it wasn't cultivated, it wasn't even discovered. It simply existed, waiting quietly in nests long before human beings learned to write, farm, or build civilizations. Every morning, somewhere in the ancient world, another egg appeared, small, perfectly sealed, containing everything needed to create an entirely new life. No machine has ever improved upon its design, no engineer has built a better package, and perhaps most remarkably, no food in human history has survived longer. Empires vanished, languages disappeared, entire civilizations collapsed beneath sand and jungle. Yet the egg remained. It fed hunter-gatherers, it crossed oceans with sailors, it marched beside soldiers. It survived famine, plague, industrial revolutions, and world wars. Even today, billions of people begin their morning with essentially the same food our distant ancestors once gathered from wild nests thousands of years ago. That raises an extraordinary question. How did one simple food become one of the greatest survivors in the history of life itself? The answer begins long before humanity. In fact, it begins long before mammals, long before birds, long before flowers even existed. To understand the history of eggs, we have to travel back more than 300 million years. The Earth looked completely different. The continents were still joining together into the supercontinent scientists now call Pangaea. There were no birds singing through forests, no mammals running across grasslands. Instead, the world belonged to ancient reptiles and amphibians. Life faced one enormous problem: water. The earliest vertebrates depended completely on ponds, lakes, rivers, and wetlands for reproduction. Their soft eggs dried out almost immediately if laid on land. Without water, life couldn't spread very far. Then evolution produced one of the greatest biological inventions in Earth's history: the amniotic egg. Unlike earlier eggs, this remarkable structure surrounded the developing embryo with protective membranes, nutrients, and its own tiny aquatic environment. Suddenly, reproduction no longer depended on standing water. Animals could move inland, across forests, over mountains, into deserts. The egg transformed life itself. Scientists often describe the amniotic egg as one of evolution's greatest breakthroughs. Without it, dinosaurs might never have ruled the Earth. Birds might never have existed. Even mammals, including humans, owe their distant ancestry to this ancient evolutionary innovation. In many ways, civilization began because life first learned how to package itself inside an egg. Millions of years passed. The dinosaurs came. They dominated Earth for more than 160 million years. Every giant predator, every enormous plant eater, every feathered hunter began life inside an egg. Imagine that for a moment. The largest animals ever to walk across our planet all started inside something small enough to fit between two hands. The egg quietly witnessed entire worlds rise and disappear. Then came one of Earth's greatest catastrophes. About 66 million years ago, an asteroid struck what is now Mexico. The impact unleashed unimaginable destruction. Wildfires, tsunamis, darkened skies, food chains collapsed. Nearly 3/4 of all species disappeared forever. The dinosaurs vanished. Or at least, most of them did. Because one branch survived. Small feathered dinosaurs we now call birds. Their ancestors continued laying eggs exactly as they always had. The shell changed very little. Its purpose remained exactly the same: protect life until it was ready to emerge. In that sense, every chicken egg cracked open today carries an astonishing connection to creatures that once shared the Earth with Tyrannosaurus rex. Long before humans admired them, eggs had already survived one of the greatest extinction events in Earth's history. Eventually, humans arrived. At first, they didn't raise chickens. They simply searched for eggs wherever nature provided them. Imagine a group of hunter-gatherers walking quietly through woodlands at the beginning of spring. They know where wild ducks usually nest, where geese return each year, where shorebirds hide their eggs among grasses. Finding eggs required knowledge passed from one generation to another. Which birds nested early? Which became aggressive when approached? Which eggs could safely be eaten? For early humans, eggs represented something extraordinary. Unlike hunting, they required no dangerous chase. Unlike fruit, they didn't depend entirely on the season. Unlike roots, they required little digging. A single egg contained concentrated nutrition wrapped inside its own natural container. No bowl, no basket, no preparation. Nature had already packaged everything. Archaeological evidence suggests people collected wild bird eggs at least 10,000 years before recorded history began. Sites across Southeast Asia, China, and other regions preserve fragments of eggshell alongside stone tools and cooking remains. Those broken shells tell an important story. Long before agriculture, eggs had already become part of the human diet. Yet gathering wild eggs always had limits. Birds laid only during certain seasons. Finding nests required time. Some birds fiercely defended them. Others nested in dangerous cliffs or wetlands. Humans gradually realized something important. Instead of searching endlessly for eggs, why not keep the birds nearby? Somewhere between 8 and 10,000 years ago, communities across Southeast Asia began forming a remarkable relationship with a small forest bird, the red jungle fowl. At first glance, it didn't seem especially important. It wasn't large, it wasn't powerful, it certainly couldn't carry heavy loads, but it possessed one extraordinary quality. It laid eggs, again and again. Generation after generation, people allowed the friendliest birds to remain near villages. They protected them from predators, shared scraps of food, eventually encouraged them to breed. Without realizing it, humans had begun one of the longest agricultural partnerships in history. The wild red jungle fowl laid surprisingly few eggs each year, perhaps half a dozen under natural conditions. That was enough for survival, nothing more. But over centuries, people unknowingly selected birds that produced slightly more eggs. Those birds produced offspring. Their daughters laid a little more. Generation after generation, the change accumulated. No single farmer noticed the transformation. It happened too slowly. Yet after thousands of years, the descendants of those forest birds would produce hundreds of eggs annually. One of humanity's greatest food sources had quietly been created through patience rather than invention. As chickens spread, so did eggs. Trade routes carried them across Asia. Merchants introduced chickens to India, Persia, Mesopotamia, eventually Egypt. Every civilization that encountered them recognized the same remarkable advantage. Unlike cattle, you didn't need large pastures. Unlike sheep, there was no waiting months for wool. Unlike pigs, you didn't have to slaughter the animal to obtain food. A healthy hen simply continued producing, day after day, month after month, year after year. That steady reliability changed everything. Ancient Egyptian households valued chickens not primarily for meat, but for eggs. Temple artwork from the New Kingdom period depicts domestic birds living alongside other farm animals. To Egyptian thinkers, the egg carried symbolic meaning as well. Many creation stories imagined the universe itself emerging from a cosmic egg, floating upon the waters of chaos. The symbolism wasn't difficult to understand. An egg appeared completely still, completely silent. Then suddenly, life emerged. Few objects better represented creation itself. The Greeks admired eggs for far more practical reasons. Travelers carried boiled eggs because they remained edible longer than many fresh foods. Physicians considered them nourishing for recovering patients. Athletes consumed them for strength. Even cosmetics occasionally included egg yolk. Very little went to waste. The shell found new purposes, the white found others. The yolk served still more. Nothing about the egg seemed ordinary. It solved problem after problem. By the time Rome became the dominant power around the Mediterranean, eggs had become part of everyday life. Roman farms expanded poultry production dramatically. Markets sold fresh eggs daily. Cookbooks preserved recipes for omelets, custards, baked dishes, and sauces remarkably similar to foods people still prepare today. Roman banquets traditionally began with eggs before moving toward larger courses. The phrase, "from the egg to the apples," became a way of describing an entire meal from beginning to end. It was difficult to imagine Roman cooking without eggs. Perhaps even more remarkable, as Roman roads expanded across Europe, chickens traveled with them. Soldiers carried them. Farmers raised them. Settlements adopted them. The egg quietly followed every growing civilization. Empires spread by armies. The egg spread by breakfast. By the time Rome reached its greatest size, one small food-connected villages from Britain to North Africa. Yet the greatest test of the egg's survival still lay ahead. Empires eventually fall, trade routes collapse, cities decline. History would soon enter one of its most uncertain periods, and through all of it, the egg would continue appearing every single morning. In part 2, we'll discover how eggs became one of the most valuable forms of money during the Middle Ages, helped build some of Europe's greatest cathedrals, survived wars, famines, and religious upheaval, and quietly became the food that ordinary families depended upon when almost everything else disappeared. Before we continue, I'd love to hear from you. How many eggs do you eat in an average week? Let me know in the comments. You might be surprised how one of the oldest foods in history is still one of the most common foods on our tables today. When the Western Roman Empire collapsed in the 5th century, the world changed almost overnight. Trade routes that had connected thousands of miles began to disappear. Cities shrank, markets emptied. Roads that once carried merchants and soldiers slowly fell into disrepair. For millions of ordinary people, life became smaller, quieter, and far more uncertain. Yet every morning, something extraordinary still happened. A hen laid an egg. That single event, repeated countless times across Europe, Asia, and the Middle East, became one of the quiet foundations of survival during the Middle Ages. Unlike grain, eggs didn't require vast fields. Unlike cattle, they didn't demand expensive land. A family with only a tiny cottage and a few chickens could still produce one of the most nutritious foods available. The egg became the food of ordinary people, not because it was luxurious, but because it was dependable. Medieval villages rarely measured wealth the way we do today. Many families owned almost nothing, perhaps a small garden, a few tools, one cow if they were fortunate. But even the poorest households often kept several hens scratching around the yard. Those birds turned kitchen scraps, insects, and seeds into fresh food almost every day. It was one of history's most efficient food systems. Nothing was wasted, nothing complicated. Nature simply kept working. The importance of eggs grew so much that they gradually became something few people would expect: money. Across medieval England, France, Germany, and much of Europe, historical records repeatedly mention eggs being used to pay rent, taxes, and debts. A peasant who possessed very little cash could still meet certain obligations by delivering eggs to a landlord. Imagine walking several miles carrying baskets filled with carefully packed eggs. Those eggs weren't simply breakfast, they represented survival. They paid for the right to remain on the land. In many communities, eggs became one of the most reliable forms of exchange because everyone needed them. The rich bought them, monasteries collected them, markets traded them, travelers purchased them. Unlike precious metals, everyone understood their value immediately. They were food first, currency second. That practical value gave eggs a remarkable stability through centuries of political uncertainty. Kings came and went, borders shifted, wars erupted. The egg remained valuable. Religion also transformed the history of eggs in unexpected ways. Throughout medieval Europe, the Christian calendar included long periods of fasting. During Lent and numerous other holy days, eating meat was restricted for much of the population. Exactly which foods were permitted varied across different regions and periods, but eggs occupied an unusual place in these traditions. Sometimes they were prohibited, sometimes permitted, sometimes saved until Easter celebrations. The result was an enormous seasonal demand unlike anything seen before. As Easter approached, families often accumulated eggs that could not immediately be eaten. Rather than wasting them, people developed ingenious methods to preserve them. Some coated shells with animal fat to reduce moisture loss. Others packed eggs in bran, ash, or cool cellars. Monasteries became especially skilled at preserving eggs through changing seasons. Without refrigeration, every successful preservation method mattered, because an egg saved during spring might become essential weeks later. Then came one of history's most colorful traditions: decorated eggs. Long before chocolate eggs filled supermarket shelves, families across Europe dyed real eggs using natural colors. Onion skins produced rich golden browns. Beetroot created shades of red. Leaves pressed against shells formed delicate patterns. These decorated eggs became symbols of renewal and hope after the long winter months. Even today, Easter eggs preserve a tradition stretching back hundreds of years. Yet perhaps the most surprising role eggs played during the Middle Ages had nothing to do with eating them at all. They helped build some of the greatest structures ever created. Walk into a medieval cathedral today. Look upward toward the towering stone arches, the brilliant stained glass windows, the colorful painted decorations that have survived for centuries. Hidden within those masterpieces is an ingredient few visitors ever imagine: eggs. Builders discovered that egg whites mixed with lime strengthened certain mortars used in construction. Artists relied on egg tempera, a paint made by blending pigments with egg yolk. Unlike many early paints, egg tempera dried quickly, bonded exceptionally well, and preserved astonishing detail. Some of history's greatest medieval paintings still survive because of that simple mixture. Illuminated manuscripts copied painstakingly by monks also depended upon eggs. Egg white was used during the preparation of parchment and in finishing decorative illustrations. Without eggs, many of the books that carried knowledge through the Middle Ages might never have survived in their present form. It is remarkable to think that one ordinary food quietly helped preserve extraordinary works of architecture, literature, and art. The egg wasn't only feeding civilization, it was helping build it. As trade gradually recovered, eggs traveled farther than ever before. Markets expanded. Merchant caravans crossed mountains. Ships carried goods across seas. Fresh eggs remained difficult to transport over great distances, but local production flourished almost everywhere people settled. The reason was simple. Chickens adapted well to many climates. From cold northern villages to warm Mediterranean farms, hens continued laying eggs with remarkable consistency. No matter the language, no matter the culture, no matter the religion, people quickly recognized their value. By the Renaissance, eggs had become deeply woven into culinary traditions across Europe. French cooks perfected delicate omelets. Italian kitchens created fresh pasta enriched with egg yolks. Spanish bakers incorporated eggs into rich pastries. English households relied on eggs for puddings, pies, and countless everyday meals. The ingredients seemed endlessly adaptable. Boiled, poached, fried, baked, whisked into sauces, beaten into cakes, mixed into bread. There seemed to be no limit to what one egg could become. Scientists today understand why. Eggs possess extraordinary chemical properties. The proteins within egg whites unfold and reconnect when heated, creating firm structures. The fats within yolks emulsify liquids that would otherwise separate. In baking, eggs trap air, creating light textures. In sauces, they provide smoothness. Without realizing the underlying chemistry, generations of cooks mastered these remarkable properties simply through observation. The egg became one of the most versatile ingredients in culinary history. Then, the Industrial Revolution changed everything. For thousands of years, most eggs came from small household flocks. Cities, however, were growing rapidly. Millions of people left farms to work in factories. Urban populations exploded. Supplying those cities required entirely new food systems. Railroads transformed egg production. For the first time, eggs could travel hundreds of miles quickly enough to reach distant markets before spoiling. Specialized poultry farms expanded dramatically. What had once been a backyard activity slowly evolved into a commercial industry. By the late 19th century, dedicated egg farms containing hundreds or even thousands of hens supplied growing cities across Europe and North America. Production increased every year. Yet an even greater transformation arrived during the 20th century. Scientists learned how to improve poultry nutrition. Artificial lighting allowed hens to continue laying during seasons when daylight naturally decreased. Selective breeding dramatically increased egg production. The wild red jungle fowl, ancestor of every modern chicken, produced perhaps 6 eggs each year. Traditional farm chickens eventually reached dozens. Modern laying hens could now produce more than 250 eggs annually. Some exceeded 300. That extraordinary increase completely changed humanity's relationship with eggs. For thousands of years, eggs had often been precious. Now they became abundant. A food once valuable enough to pay rent gradually became so common that many people stopped thinking about its remarkable history altogether. Today, the world produces well over 1 trillion eggs every single year. Every day, billions of people crack open shells without realizing they are participating in one of the oldest continuous food traditions on Earth. What began with wild birds nesting in ancient forests has become one of the largest food systems humanity has ever created. And yet, despite industrial farming, refrigeration, supermarkets, and global transportation, the egg itself remains almost unchanged. Its shell still protects, its white still nourishes, its yolk still contains nearly everything required to begin a new life. Perhaps that's the greatest mystery of all. Human civilization transformed almost beyond recognition. Empires rose and disappeared. Technology advanced beyond imagination. Entire ways of life vanished forever. Yet the egg remained fundamentally the same. It didn't need reinvention. It simply continued doing what nature designed it to do millions of years ago. In the final part of our story, we'll uncover how eggs survived world wars, nutritional controversies, and modern health debates, why scientists eventually reversed decades of dietary advice about eggs, and why this ancient food may still be one of the most complete natural foods humans have ever eaten. Before we continue, I'd love to hear from you. What surprised you the most, that eggs were once used to pay rent, that they helped build medieval cathedrals, or that the same basic egg has remained almost unchanged since the age of the dinosaurs? Let me know in the comments. I read every one of them, and I'd love to hear which part of the egg's incredible journey amazed you most. For thousands of years, the egg earned humanity's trust. It survived the collapse of empires. It crossed oceans with explorers. It fed families through famine. It traveled with soldiers into war. It remained one of the few foods that nearly every culture valued. Then, during the 20th century, something unexpected happened. People began to fear it. The concern centered on one word: cholesterol. Beginning in the 1960s and accelerating through the 1970s and 1980s, many health authorities advised people to limit egg consumption because egg yolks contain dietary cholesterol. Breakfast tables changed almost overnight. Eggs were replaced with processed cereals, low-fat products, and artificial substitutes. For decades, millions of people believed eating more than a few eggs each week could harm their hearts. Yet science rarely stands still. As researchers conducted larger and more detailed studies over the following decades, the picture became far more complicated than anyone first imagined. They discovered that for most healthy people, the cholesterol found in food has a much smaller effect on blood cholesterol than previously believed. Instead, factors such as overall diet, excessive sugar consumption, highly processed foods, lack of physical activity, and genetics often play much larger roles in cardiovascular health. The egg itself hadn't changed. Our understanding of it had. Today, eggs are widely recognized as one of nature's most nutrient-dense foods. Inside a single shell is an extraordinary collection of nutrients packed into a remarkably small space. High-quality protein containing all 9 essential amino acids, vitamins A, D, E, and B12, riboflavin, selenium, phosphorus, healthy fats, and 2 compounds called lutein and zeaxanthin, which help support eye health as people age. The yolk also contains choline, a nutrient essential for brain development, memory, and normal nervous system function. Many people don't consume enough of it, yet eggs remain one of its richest natural sources. Perhaps that explains why so many cultures independently placed eggs near the center of their diets. They didn't understand vitamins, they knew nothing about amino acids, they couldn't measure protein quality, but they observed results. Children grew well, workers stayed strong, recovering patients regained energy. Experience taught lessons long before laboratories confirmed them. Even today, eggs remain one of the most affordable sources of complete protein available anywhere in the world. Whether served over rice in Japan, folded into a French omelet, mixed into fresh Italian pasta, boiled for school lunches, or simply fried for breakfast, the egg continues adapting to every culture it touches. Few foods have achieved such universal acceptance. Yet perhaps the most remarkable part of this story has nothing to do with nutrition. It is survival. Think about everything the egg has witnessed. It existed before birds, before mammals, before humanity itself. It survived the extinction that ended the age of the dinosaurs. It nourished the first hunter-gatherers. It followed the earliest farmers into their villages. It traveled through the kingdoms of Egypt, Greece, Rome, China, and countless civilizations whose names have faded into history. It helped feed medieval Europe. It helped build cathedrals. It crossed the Atlantic aboard wooden sailing ships. It survived industrial revolutions, global wars, economic depressions, and scientific revolutions. Very few foods can claim a history stretching hundreds of millions of years. The egg can. Perhaps that is why it continues to fascinate scientists, historians, chefs, and ordinary families alike. It is one of the simplest foods we know, yet also one of the most extraordinary. Every time you crack an egg into a pan, you're holding the result of millions of years of evolution and thousands of years of human history. Very little about it has changed. The shell still protects, the yolk still nourishes, the white still supports new life. It remains one of nature's most elegant designs, the food that survived extinction, the food that survived empires, and perhaps one of the few foods that will continue nourishing humanity for generations yet to come. Thank you for joining me on this journey through one of history's oldest foods. Now I'd love to hear from you. What's your favorite way to eat eggs, and what fact from today's story surprised you the most? Share your answer in the comments below. I read every comment, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you enjoy uncovering the forgotten history behind the foods we eat every day, don't forget to subscribe. There are many more incredible stories hiding in the world's oldest foods, and I can't wait to explore them with you.